Wedding dresses with voluminous crinolines, touching vows of eternal love at the altar, and romantic honeymoons. This is exactly how Victorian marriages are portrayed in popular women's novels and beautiful movies. But what if I told you right now that this idealized picture of the early days of married life in the 19th century bears no resemblance to reality? The hidden, sometimes frightening truth, which biographers have shamefully kept silent about for years, lies in the calculating and incredibly cold traditions of high society. Just imagine this nightmare. Very young girls, raised in the strictest isolation, entered a completely new life without the slightest understanding of physiological reality or their true, sometimes frightening responsibilities. For years, they were taught to embroider beautifully, to keep silent, and to play the harp, but no one even hinted at what they would face behind the closed doors of the bedroom. Behind the glittering, luxurious facades of gigantic mansions lay a ruthless system of patriarchal rules, where a noble bride instantly became her husband's legal property, just like a carriage or a piece of furniture. Be sure to watch this video all the way to the very last second, because today we're going to shatter the rose-colored glasses of Victorian romance. You'll learn how the true cost of a prestigious marriage turned into complete, suffocating social control for women. And toward the end, I'll reveal a shocking medical diagnosis that doctors of the time gave to wives deemed too wayward in order to silence them forever. I guarantee it will send chills down your spine. Get comfortable, make sure you're subscribed to the channel, and let's get started. The secret passed down from generation to generation lies in the unseen labor of the servants. Preparing a young woman for married life required a colossal effort on the part of an entire staff of maids. Early in the morning, the bustle began in the bedroom with lighting the fireplaces and heating water for ablutions. Heavy physical labor fell on the shoulders of the maids, who had to ensure their mistress looked perfect. This hidden mechanism of household management remained completely invisible to guests and the groom himself. The entire dressing procedure could take several hours of monotonous work. The maids had to tightly lace the corsets, striving to create the perfect silhouette. The delicate fabrics of the dresses required extreme care when ironed with heavy coal-fired irons. Styling complex hairstyles using pins and pomades turned into a real test of patience. The bride herself played the role of a beautiful doll in the skilled hands of others. A lack of personal space was the norm in aristocratic households of that time. Servants were constantly nearby, assisting with literally every movement. A young woman could not even put on simple items of her elaborate wardrobe on her own. The constant presence of strangers created an atmosphere of tension and a complete lack of privacy. Maids knew all the habits and secrets of their young mistresses. The very process of changing into a travel dress after the ceremony was a ritual in itself. The heavy wedding gown was removed, each layer of expensive fabric carefully smoothed out. The travel outfit had to be practical, yet demonstrate the young wife's high status. The maids adjusted her hat one last time and handed her thick gloves. The young woman bid farewell to her familiar world and to those who had cared for her for many years. A new maid, often hired specifically for the married lady, set off on the journey with the couple. She was tasked with maintaining the accustomed level of comfort in the unfamiliar surroundings of hotels. Her presence ensured that the young wife would always look impeccable. Men of high society paid no attention whatsoever to these subtleties of daily life. All responsibility for appearance and order fell on the hired staff. The labor of the servants remained the invisible foundation of Victorian society. Without their daily work, the functioning of the vast mansions would have been absolutely impossible. The living conditions of the maids themselves were radically different from the luxury of their employers' quarters. They huddled in tiny dark rooms under the roof and worked from dawn to dusk. This social divide was an unchanging part of the way of life for wealthy families. A young wife had to quickly learn how to manage this staff. The reputation of her entire new household depended on her ability to lead the servants. Many young women felt immense stress from the sudden responsibility for people that had fallen upon them. Training and managing a vast household took place directly on the job. The young mistress's mistakes often became a source of hidden discontent among the experienced housekeepers. The daily routine demanded strict adherence to a schedule and a rigid hierarchy. Every member of the staff knew their specific duties and their place in the household hierarchy. Managing this complex system became the woman's primary task once the festivities were over. Incredible labor lay behind the picture-perfect image of aristocratic prosperity. I'd be very interested to hear your perspective on this exploitation of labor, so please share your thoughts in the comments and be sure to subscribe to the channel. I'll reveal the best-kept secret about where Victorian-era newlyweds actually went. Contrary to modern assumptions, they rarely traveled to exotic countries or tropical islands. The main destination for the first weeks of marriage was popular domestic resorts. A trip to Bath or the seaside was considered the ideal choice for wealthy couples. Such a trip allowed them to change their surroundings without unnecessary risks or long journeys. The choice of route often depended on the season and the personal preferences of the bride and groom's families. Wealthy aristocrats could afford to rent an entire house on the coast for privacy. The journey was made in their own carriages, accompanied by a huge amount of luggage and servants. The roads of that time left much to be desired, so the trip took several long days. Stops along the way were made only at trusted and respectable hotels. Bath attracted newlyweds with its architecture and the tranquil atmosphere of high society. During the day, couples strolled along the wide streets, showing off their new outfits. Seaside resorts offered a different kind of leisure, involving walks on the beach and fresh air. Swimming in the sea was considered therapeutic, although the process itself looked quite peculiar due to strict rules of modesty. Special bathing machines concealed women from prying eyes while they were in the water. The purpose of such a trip was not only seclusion, but also gradually getting to know one another. Before the wedding, young people rarely spent time alone without the watchful supervision of their chaperones. The journey gave them the opportunity to begin interacting in a more relaxed and informal setting. They would have breakfast together, read books, or simply enjoy the views from the carriage window. This period was meant to lay the foundation for their future life together in a large house. Leisure time often boiled down to tedious rituals and formal courtesy visits. The local aristocracy considered it their duty to pay a visit to the new family and pay their respects. This required constant readiness to receive guests and engage in small talk. True privacy was practically impossible to achieve due to the packed schedule of engagements. Leisure time turned into an extension of social obligations to society. The weather also threw a wrench into the newlyweds' plans during their trip. Frequent rain and fog forced them to sit in their hotel room all day long. The lack of entertainment led to awkward silences and attempts to find common topics of conversation. Men often missed their clubs and their usual social circles in the capital. Women tried to keep themselves occupied with embroidery or reading permitted novels. Both parties often looked forward to returning home with great anticipation. The journey was exhausting, and the couple wanted to get back to their own routine as soon as possible. Arrival at the family estate marked the end of the festive period and the beginning of real life. It was there that the couple would have to establish their own rules and order for many years to come. The fairy tale was coming to an end, giving way to everyday household duties and routine. The tradition of wedding trips gradually evolved, but the essence remained the same. It was a transitional phase between carefree youth and the strict rules of adult life. Society demanded that all formalities be observed even far from the capital. Do you agree with this? And how do you view the tradition of such regulated trips? In the next chapter, you will learn why the onset of darkness caused real panic among brides. What I am about to reveal is banned in some countries due to the frankness of historical realities. The main problem for young women was a complete lack of knowledge about physiology. Society strictly guarded the bride's innocence, shielding them from any information about marital duties. The very mention of the physical aspects of marriage was considered the height of indecency and was strictly condemned. Girls entered marriage with the mind of an absolutely pure and unsophisticated child. The information vacuum was filled with absurd rumors and frightening innuendos. Older women in the family limited themselves to vague phrases about a woman's duty and the need for patience. No one explained the mechanics of the process, which gave rise to monstrous fantasies and panic-stricken terror. Brides often believed that something destructive and agonizing awaited them. This fear of the unknown poisoned all the joyful moments of the wedding celebration. The uniqueness of the situation lay in the fact that men, on the other hand, had a wealth of experience. Before marriage, they could freely visit various establishments and socialize with women from other social classes. This imbalance in knowledge created an insurmountable chasm between spouses in the bedroom. Husbands often did not understand the reasons for their young wives' hysteria and fear. A lack of empathy and tact turned the first night into a real ordeal for the psyche. Anatomical details of the body were concealed even in medical literature accessible to women. Illustrations in books were retouched, and texts were replaced with allegories about flowers and nature. As a result, a young woman might simply not understand what exactly was expected of her. Physical contact with a man was perceived as a crude invasion of personal space. The body was encased in a shell of prohibitions and complexes from the earliest childhood. The diaries of that era are filled with veiled complaints about their husband's rudeness and lack of understanding. Women confided their fears only to the pages of their private journals, kept under lock and key. They described their feelings as a mixture of deep disappointment and overwhelming melancholy. The idealized image of the knight from novels was shattered by harsh reality. The bedroom became a place of fulfilling a heavy duty rather than a space for love. Gradually, the situation regarding education began to change, but at an extremely slow pace. It was only toward the end of the era that the first attempts were made to delicately educate future brides. Special brochures were written in complex and flowery language, full of metaphors and allusions. However, even such scant information provided at least some anchor in a sea of uncertainty. But for most young women, their only salvation remained time and long-standing habit. This phenomenon of total ignorance was a tool of patriarchal control. An uninformed and intimidated woman was completely submissive to the will of her influential husband. She had nothing to compare it to, and she accepted any form of treatment as the norm. The lack of knowledge deprived her of the ability to defend her boundaries and desires. The system worked flawlessly, ensuring the complete subjugation of the weaker half of humanity. Learning these facts forces us to take a fresh look at beautiful historical novels. Behind the facade of lavish dresses and balls lay shattered lives and unspoken suffering. This historical lesson shows just how important it is to openly discuss complex topics. Be sure to like this video if you support the dissemination of accurate historical truth.
He's right. The committee won't stand for it.
Here's what goes on behind the closed doors of the luxurious mansions of high society. Huge palaces and estates concealed a layout that would astonish the modern person. Spouses from wealthy families almost never slept in the same bed. Having separate bedrooms was the main sign of a couple's high status and wealth. This tradition had deep practical and social roots in Victorian society. The wife's private quarters consisted of an entire suite of rooms, including a boudoir and a dressing room. This was her personal realm, where entry without knocking was strictly forbidden, even to her husband. Here she spent most of the day reading, entertaining close friends, or doing needlework. The husband's bedroom was located in another part of the house and featured a strictly functional interior. This division of space allowed the spouses to fully relax apart from one another. The practical side of the matter came down to basic comfort in daily routines. Men could stay out late at clubs, playing cards or discussing politics. Their late return was not meant to disturb the light sleep of the mistress of the vast house. Women, in turn, began their day with lengthy grooming and dressing routines. Separate bedrooms prevented domestic conflicts arising from differing habits and schedules. Moreover, the rooms themselves in Old English houses were incredibly cold. There was no central heating, and fireplaces could not warm the vast rooms. At night, the temperature in the bedrooms dropped to extremely uncomfortable and harsh levels. One had to sleep under a mountain of heavy blankets and thick nightgowns and bonnets. Under such conditions, maintaining a romantic atmosphere became physically impossible. A husband's visits to his wife's bedroom were formal in nature and took place by mutual agreement. This was not a spontaneous expression of affection, but rather a carefully planned event. The husband would knock on the door between the rooms and wait for official permission to enter. Such distance helped maintain the illusion of politeness and endless respect in marriage. However, it also killed any spontaneity and emotional closeness between people. Spatial independence gave aristocratic women at least the illusion of personal freedom. In her boudoir, a woman could remove her tight corset and simply relax physically. Here, she didn't have to constantly keep her back straight and watch every word she said. It was a safe haven from the constant pressure of society and strict rules of etiquette. Personal space became the main source of comfort in a strictly regulated life. The interiors of women's bedrooms were striking for their rich fabrics and abundance of small details. The walls were upholstered in silk, and massive dressing tables with huge mirrors were installed. A multitude of pillows and rugs created a cozy atmosphere that contrasted with the cold halls of the first floor. The husband's bedrooms, by contrast, often resembled Spartan dwellings with a minimum of elegant decor. This difference in design clearly underscored the different social roles of the sexes. The servants strictly enforced the boundaries of these separate private spaces. The wives' maids and the husband's valets formed two independent camps within the vast house. They coordinated their master's actions by passing notes and delivering polite verbal messages. The interaction between the spouses often resembled diplomatic negotiations between two independent sovereign states. Daily life was organized to minimize chance encounters in the long corridors. This tradition persisted for many decades, remaining the norm among the elite. Only members of the lower classes shared a single bed due to a simple lack of space. The division of space was a vivid symbol of wealth, inaccessible to the common working people. How comfortable do you think it was to live in such segregated conditions? In the next chapter, we will discuss how society pressured young women to continue the family line.
And that is precisely why he
The
was
primary goal of any aristocratic marriage was to ensure the continuity of the male line. Immediately upon returning from their honeymoon, society began to closely monitor the wife's well-being. The slightest ailment or refusal to dance at a ball was perceived as a long-awaited sign of joy. The pressure from the relatives of her powerful husband was immense and unrelenting. The woman became a valuable instrument for passing on a title and a vast fortune. The very state of awaiting an heir was shrouded in numerous superstitions and strict restrictions. Aristocratic women were forbidden from looking at unpleasant things so as not to harm the future count or duke. Physical activity was kept to a minimum, which had an extremely negative effect on muscle tone. Doctors prescribed bed rest and a strict diet, which only complicated the situation. The woman found herself isolated, locked away in her rooms for long, dreary months. The process of bringing a new heir into the world was a true test of endurance. 19th century medicine was at a low level, especially regarding basic hygiene. The lack of modern medical interventions made this natural stage extremely difficult. Women were well aware of all the risks and drew up wills before the fateful day. Each new pregnancy was perceived as a dangerous game of roulette with one's own fate. The constant fear for their future weighed heavily on the shoulders of young aristocratic women. They watched as their peers disappeared from high society, unable to bear the burden. These grim statistics were a harsh reality that people tried not to speak of aloud. The fortitude of these women deserves immense respect from the perspective of our enlightened age. They sacrificed their own well-being for the prosperity of powerful political dynasties. If an heir was safely born, the family's attitude toward the woman changed dramatically. She received deep respect, high status, and a certain degree of social immunity. Having fulfilled her primary role, the titled wife could finally breathe a huge sigh of relief. Husbands often presented her with expensive jewelry on this day as a token of gratitude. From that moment on, her position in the vast household became truly secure.
It's exquisite.
However, the upbringing of the heirs was handled exclusively by numerous nannies and governesses. An aristocrat saw her heir only during strictly allotted short hours. The formation of familial affection under such conditions was extremely slow and difficult. Tradition dictated maintaining emotional distance from the younger generation for the sake of character strength. Emotional coldness was passed down through dynasties as the family's most cherished heirloom. The need to continue the family line dictated strict rules of the game in the high society marriage market. When choosing a bride, families looked not at her intellect, but at her robust physical health. Romance and tender feelings always took a back seat to pragmatic calculations. Marriage was a financial and biological transaction between two powerful corporations known as families. Love was considered a pleasant but entirely optional bonus in this strict contract. This value system made women hostages to their own nature and centuries-old traditions. Their true worth was measured solely by their ability to bring a new powerful lord into the world. Individual talents and personal aspirations were ruthlessly suppressed for the sake of a single grand goal. This harsh aspect of life was carefully concealed behind the glittering facades of ballrooms. The true picture of this historical era is composed of these silent and very difficult destinies. What major historical film production companies hide concerns everyday discomfort. Dresses on screen look light and airy, but the reality was quite different. Victorian-era clothing consisted of a complex and incredibly heavy, multi-layered structure. The total weight of such an outfit could reach 15 kilograms, depending on the season. Carrying such a burden every day was a real test of a woman's endurance. The main instrument of elegance remained the rigid corset with sturdy metal stays. It deformed the internal organs and hindered normal breathing, restricting lung capacity.
Just breathe.
Women often fainted from a simple lack of oxygen in stuffy enclosed rooms. The corset was laced so tightly that the waist appeared unnaturally thin and incredibly fragile. This conventional standard of beauty demanded daily torment and ruined health from a young age. Beneath the outer dress lay a multitude of petticoats, giving the silhouette the desired volume. In the summer, it was unbearably hot and stuffy in this multi-layered fabric armor. The fabrics were not breathable, creating a veritable greenhouse effect for the body encased within. Moving in such a cumbersome outfit required taking only tiny, very gentle steps. Any sudden movement could damage the expensive lace or cause a sudden fall. A separate problem was the specific odors that accompanied the daily life of the aristocracy. Regular washing of the entire body was considered harmful to health and was practiced extremely rarely. Instead of water, women used copious amounts of strong perfumes, powder, and heavy aromatic oils. The mixture of floral scents and natural odors created a stifling and dense atmosphere. Bedrooms and living rooms were always filled with the thick and very distinctive scent of that era. It was not customary to air out rooms due to a constant, irrational fear of drafts. Windows were tightly closed with heavy curtains, letting in neither fresh air nor sunlight. The rooms smelled of mothballs, old wax, and the dampness of massive stone walls. This stale air was quickly absorbed into the expensive fabrics of dresses and the velvet upholstery of the furniture. Life unfolded in a peculiar dark cocoon, isolated from the vast outside world. Nightwear differed little from daywear in terms of its heaviness and coverage. Long nightgowns made of thick, cool fabric covered the body from chin to heel. The head was always covered with a nightcap to avoid ruining the expensive, elaborate hairstyle. Sleeping in such heavy attire was hot, awkward, and utterly uncomfortable. Physical comfort was always sacrificed to strict Victorian rules of propriety. All these details paint a completely different, unromantic picture of a bygone historical era. Beauty was heavy, stifling, and demanded incredible physical endurance every single day. Women stoically endured these hardships, considering them the natural and proper order of things. Do you agree that external aesthetics demanded so many invisible daily sacrifices? In the next chapter, we will examine how society established total and uncompromising control over women. The life of a noblewoman was subject to the strictest set of unwritten rules and social codes. Society controlled her every move, harshly punishing even the slightest deviation from the established norm. Reputation was the most fragile and valuable asset, one that could be lost with incredible ease. A single careless word or a glance that lingered too long could become the catalyst for devastating gossip. Free will was absent as a concept, replaced by a sense of absolute and unquestioning duty. An unmarried young woman was not permitted to go out onto a busy street without being accompanied by an adult chaperone. A married woman enjoyed more freedom, but her behavior remained under the close scrutiny of society. Any display of excessive emotion or independent, bold opinions was considered extremely bad form. The ideal woman was expected to be submissive, quiet, and always emphatically friendly. She served as a beautiful complement to the high social status of her wealthy, titled husband. Charity was the only acceptable form of social activity for noble, wealthy ladies. They organized bustling bazaars, raised funds for the poor, and visited local shelters. This allowed them to feel important and step outside the confines of their stuffy homes. However, even these charitable activities were strictly controlled by the local church and their conservative husbands. Any step toward politics or real social reform was harshly and swiftly suppressed by society. The right to divorce was virtually non-existent, making an unhappy marriage a harsh, lifelong sentence. To dissolve a union, a special act of parliament and enormous, prohibitive sums of money were required. A woman caught in infidelity lost everything, including even the slightest access to her own heirs. Male infidelity, on the other hand, was viewed with leniency as an inevitable and acceptable social evil. Double standards of morality were firmly entrenched at both the legislative and everyday levels. Sincere friendship among women was the only true outlet in this strict, cold world. In long letters to their friends, they could pour out their hearts and complain about their difficult fate. These paper confessions were carefully hidden from prying eyes in the secret compartments of elegant wooden boxes. Female solidarity helped them survive under constant and intense psychological pressure. Friends supported one another with wise advice during the most difficult moments of their monotonous lives.
Tell us everything.
Social gatherings and balls resembled rehearsed theatrical productions with predetermined roles. Every polite smile, every slight bow was carefully calculated and carried a specific social meaning. Sincerity at such formal events was not merely inappropriate, but truly socially dangerous. The women wore invisible, heavy masks that concealed their true thoughts and secret aspirations. This universal hypocrisy was a necessary condition for successful survival in high society. As they grew older, the ladies themselves became ruthless guardians of these harsh patriarchal and conservative traditions. Elderly widowed duchesses zealously monitored the moral conduct of the carefree young socialites. They handed down merciless, harsh judgments on those who dared to violate the long-established rules. The system effectively reproduced itself, forcing recent victims to become their own overseers. Breaking free from this vicious cycle of antiquated conventions was practically impossible. The entire monumental architecture of Victorian society was built on the suppression of any female individuality. Only a few desperate rebels dared to challenge this massive machine of social control. Their names were immediately branded with shame, but they paved the way for future, freer generations. The honeymoon was only the beginning of this long journey, spanning an entire complex life. On this journey, a woman of noble birth had to master the art of silent compromise. The romantic, rosy haze of the first weeks of marriage dissipated incredibly quickly in real life. The clash between naive, youthful illusions and the harsh reality of aristocratic daily life was absolutely inevitable. Young women raised on poems and ballads expected chivalrous deeds and eternal fairy tale love. Instead, they were met with dry reports from stewards and tedious political conversations over long dinners. Disappointment became the first serious and painful trial for a young woman's psyche. Husbands often lost all interest in their wives as soon as they returned to the bustling capital. They had their own busy lives in parliament, private clubs, and at prestigious horse races. The wife remained merely a beautiful detail of a rich interior and the bearer of an ancient lineage. The rare family evenings spent together were marked by a heavy and very cold silence. The lack of shared interest created an invisible, impenetrable wall between two legally close people. The lack of romance was compensated for by the unrestrained consumption of luxurious, exclusive goods and new outfits. Women spent vast fortunes on expensive fabrics, jewelry, and the complete furnishing of their interiors. Shopping became the only legal way to drown out the gaping inner void in daily boredom. Husbands willingly paid these hefty bills, thereby buying relative peace in the home. Beautiful things temporarily replaced the missing human warmth and sincere attention. Many titled wives found solace in religion, immersing themselves deeply in mysticism and long prayers. Frequent trips to church and conversations with priests gave them the illusion of support and understanding. Faith helped them come to terms with their unenviable fate and find at least some meaning in their suffering. Ancient religious texts taught patience, which was so vitally necessary in an unhappy marriage. The church became the most reliable refuge from empty worldly vanity and intense emotional pain. Another tried and true way to escape reality was through endless minor illnesses and faint ailments. In the conservative Victorian era, poor health was considered a sign of refinement and true aristocracy. Women could stay in their bedrooms for weeks on end, constantly complaining of migraines and frayed nerves. This was the only legitimate way to avoid hated social obligations or visits from an unloved husband. Doctors generously prescribed sedative drops, which only exacerbated the patient's general state of depression. Gradually, an unspoken, cold non-aggression pact took hold between the estranged spouses. They continued to brilliantly play the role of the ideal couple in public for the sake of preserving the family's reputation. At home, each lived their own separate, isolated life, trying not to cross paths unless absolutely necessary. This polite, cold neutrality suited both parties, reliably saving them from open, loud scandals. Marriage turned into a well-functioning and economically profitable commercial enterprise. Occasionally, secret and very dangerous extramarital affairs would flare up amid this dull domestic routine. However, such relationships required incredible caution and constant, devastating nervous strain. The risk of losing absolutely everything was too great, so only a few dared to cheat. Most preferred to suffer quietly and meekly in the luxurious golden cage of their enormous mansions. The fear of harsh public condemnation was always far stronger than any sudden romantic passion. With the birth of heirs, all unspent energy was channeled into matters of conservative education. Women lost themselves in abstract plans for the future greatness of the new powerful generation. The achievements of the younger members of the noble family became the main purpose for the disillusioned wives. This created a new problem of excessive, ambitious expectations and social pressure on young minds. The circle closed, passing the strict framework of etiquette down through the endless aristocratic lineage. By the time they reached maturity, youthful illusions had finally given way to harsh pragmatism and cynicism. Women learned to extract the maximum benefit from their position and skillfully manipulate those around them.
Don't worry, I have a plan.
Power over a large staff and the status of the head of the household became their main daily joy. Naivety gave way to the steely and ruthless grip of an incredibly experienced social schemer. It was a natural defensive reaction of the psyche to long years of complete emotional starvation. Ultimately, the idealized marriage of the 19th century turned out to be a beautiful yet cruel myth. Behind the glossy, formal portraits of happy families lay deep melancholy and loneliness. Romance was merely a very brief prelude to a long, monotonous, and difficult journey. Understanding this historical truth makes the images of noble women of the past more vivid and relatable. They were not merely beautifully dressed dolls, but people with deep inner dramas. The atmosphere of an aristocratic home at night was strikingly different from the daytime bustle and bright daylight. With the onset of complete darkness, the huge old mansions were plunged into thick shadows and a frightening silence. Electricity did not yet exist, and the only available source of light was ordinary candles. Real wax was expensive, so dim and smoky tallow candles were often used to save money. This flickering and uneven light created a very gloomy and slightly frightening Gothic atmosphere. Moving through the endless long corridors after dark became a real ordeal. Cold night drafts blew out the flames, forcing one to feel one's way to one's own bedroom. The creaking of wooden floorboards and the howling of strong winds in the tall chimneys frightened young and impressionable girls. The enormous house seemed like a living creature, full of hidden, invisible threats and strange, mysterious sounds. The spatial isolation of the night greatly intensified the feeling of complete loneliness and detachment from the outside world. Victorian-era nightgowns deserve special mention in the context of studying austere daily life. They were made of very thick cotton or linen, had long, closed sleeves, and a high collar. They were often richly decorated with intricate embroidery, but their primary purpose was by no means aesthetic. The nightgowns were meant to reliably retain body heat in stone rooms that were frozen to the core. Strict rules categorically forbade removing them, even during rare moments of marital intimacy. The evening routine of preparing for bed was very long and included many small, mandatory rituals. The maid carefully combed her mistress's hair and braided it into two tight plaits for the entire night. The fireplace in the large bedroom was lit in advance to warm the damp, cold air at least a little. Special copper hot water bottles filled with hot coals or boiling water were carefully placed in the bed. Without these preliminary warming measures, it was physically impossible to fall asleep in the icy bed. The darkness of night concealed the details of the opulent interior, leaving only the eerie silhouettes of the bulky antique furniture. Massive antique beds with heavy velvet canopies resembled peculiar, enormous tents or crypts. The canopies served not for aesthetic beauty, but to retain precious warmth around the sleeping person. By drawing the thick, heavy curtains, one could create a warmer, more comfortable microclimate inside the bed. However, this made the stuffy air even more stifling and heavy for peaceful nighttime breathing. Such a nighttime atmosphere had a profound effect on the perception of any potential romantic moments. Clumsy movements in pitch darkness and the abundance of heavy clothing killed even the slightest hint of sensuality. Everything took place in absolute silence, so as not to accidentally wake the servants sleeping behind the thin wall. The couple was rigidly constrained not only by strict moral boundaries, but also by insurmountable physical obstacles. Physical intimacy was reduced to the quick and purely mechanical fulfillment of the necessary marital duty. The smell of burning tallow candles constantly mingled with the sense of strong perfumes and the acrid smoke from the fireplace. In the morning, the cold rooms had to be aired out for a long time to clear them of this incredibly heavy mixture of odors. Black soot settled on the expensive silk wallpaper and ceilings, requiring constant and thorough deep cleaning. The servants had to clean dozens of candlesticks daily and trim the soot evenly from the long wicks. Maintaining basic lighting in a large estate was a whole separate industry, hidden from prying eyes. Often, impressionable women would leave a single candle burning dimly all night out of a panic-stricken fear of the dark. This dim, flickering flame was the only faint comfort in a vast, empty, cold room.
Don't come any closer.
Dreams in such uncomfortable conditions were often very disturbing and filled with realistic, harrowing nightmares. Doctors blamed this on the tight daytime corsets, which were worn for hours and severely impeded blood circulation. Waking up rarely brought a sense of true alertness and full rest after such a difficult night. The morning always began with the quiet arrival of a maid, who would draw back the heavy, thick window curtains. The pale light of a typical London or country overcast, cool morning would immediately flood into the room. A completely new day began, full of old conventions, strict rules, and hidden inner tension. The ritual of changing from nightwear to the rigid armor of daytime attire set the familiar machinery of life in motion. And so it was monotonously repeated day after day over many long and monotonous decades. By studying the minutest details of Victorian nightlife, we gain a better understanding of the complex psychology of people from the past. Their daily lives were filled with such physical discomfort that we cannot even imagine it today. The absence of modern basic conveniences shaped the reserved and incredibly stoic character of the Victorian ruling aristocracy. They knew how to silently endure the biting cold, discomfort, and emotional pain without ever showing it. In this remarkable patience lay their true historical strength and their great personal tragedy. The true cost of the aristocratic life of luxury was measured not in pounds sterling, but in shattered destinies. Beautiful, bustling balls and luxurious silk dresses were merely the vivid backdrops of a grand social theater.
Let's finalize this.
Behind every immaculate stone facade lay stories of silent, long-suffering endurance and suppressed, sincere desires. Noble women paid the highest possible price for the right to belong to society's unattainable elite. Their freedom, physical health, and personal happiness were sacrificed on the altar of upholding ancient family traditions. The system was constructed so perfectly that breaking free from it was absolutely and technically impossible. Strict parents prepared their daughters for this role from the earliest childhood, leaving them no right to choose. Conservative upbringing was aimed at destroying even the slightest manifestations of individuality and youthful defiance. A young woman was expected to become a perfect, beautiful, and submissive cog in the vast machinery of high society. Behind this flawless, idealized picture always lay broken, lonely souls and brilliant, unfulfilled talents. Titled men were also hostages to these strict rules, though to a much lesser extent. They were obligated to increase their vast fortunes and maintain the impeccable, crystal-clear reputation of their ancient lineage. Marriage without love for the sake of political or economic global gain was the norm for them as well. The heavy burden of colossal responsibility for maintaining high status weighed on their shoulders from the moment of their birth. Victorian society showed absolutely no forgiveness for the slightest weakness or deviation from the rules for either gender. The numerous servants who maintained this luxurious lifestyle also paid a very high and bitter price. They meekly sacrificed their health and the best years of their youth for a meager salary and a roof over their heads. Their daily labor was an incredibly arduous, exhaustingly monotonous, and utterly thankless, never-ending task. The enormous social chasm between the wealthy masters and the powerless servants was insurmountable and very cruel. Two completely parallel realities existed under one roof, never truly intersecting on a deep level. The traditional honeymoon served as the starting point for this complex, cold, and strictly regulated life. Bright illusions crumbled rapidly, leaving the young people face to face with the harsh reality of their situation. They had to learn to play their new roles incredibly quickly, without revealing their true feelings at all. The price of the slightest mistake was too high to allow for the luxury of sincerity or open rebellion. Outwardly flawless well-being quickly became the main meaning and sole purpose of their future existence. Contemporary cinema often romanticizes this historical era excessively, obscuring its dark and difficult aspects. Viewers are usually shown only beautiful costumes, gallant suitors, and passionate, unbelievable declarations of love. However, the true historical reality was far more prosaic, harsher, and incredibly colder than the screen version. Studying the small details of daily life allows us to take off our rose-colored glasses and see the real, living people of the past. This gives us a unique opportunity to appreciate the immense progress society has made over the past century. A deep understanding of these facts inspires immense respect for the resilient women of that distant and harsh era. They found within themselves incredible strength to live, maintain their dignity, and keep their composure under unbearable conditions. Their long, silent resistance and boundless patience became a solid foundation for future, vital women's freedoms. Every secretly transcribed page of a personal diary was a tiny step toward understanding their legal rights. They courageously blazed a difficult trail through the darkness of old prejudices for their future daughters and granddaughters. It is crucial to remember that history consists not only of bloody wars and great political achievements. Everyday quiet life, safely hidden behind bedroom walls, influenced society no less than large-scale battles. The slow shift in attitudes toward family and legal marriage took place precisely in these cold, luxurious rooms. The personal, unseen dramas of thousands of people gradually shaped entirely new social demands and moral norms. A quiet but inevitable revolution in social mores was taking shape in the austere and cold boudoir of prim Victorian England. Today we can discuss sensitive topics quite openly, topics that were once strictly forbidden by society. This greatest social achievement allows us to build relationships based on mutual trust, respect, and love. We are forever free from the dictates of rigid, outdated class rules and artificially imposed social roles. Understanding the mistakes of the past helps us greatly to appreciate the freedom of personal choice we now enjoy. The ideal modern marriage is built on complete trust, not on a set of unbreakable and cruel rules. In historical reality, the honeymoon was by no means a magical fairy tale, but a harsh school of survival for two. It was a difficult time of brutal revelations, complex adaptation, and complete submission to one's new role. Behind every beautiful romantic tradition lay hard labor and a multitude of invisible constraints. By studying this complex history, we learn to properly distinguish beautiful myths from harsh and cold historical facts. Only the unvarnished truth allows us to truly understand and deeply appreciate our own present. What do you think of today's topic? And which facts about Victorian marriage surprised you the most? Be sure to share your thoughts in the comments, suggest new historical topics, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel so you don't miss our next myth-busting episodes.